Welcome to the LeaderImpact podcast. We are a community of leaders with a network in over 350 cities around the world, dedicated to optimizing our personal, professional, and spiritual lives to have impact. This show is where we have a chance to listen and engage with leaders who are living this out. We love talking with leaders, so if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions to make the show even better, please let us know. The best way to stay connected in Canada is through our newsletter at leaderimpact.ca or on social media at LeaderImpact. If you're listening from outside of Canada, check out our website at leaderimpact.com. I'm your host, Lisa Peters, and our guest today is Allen Bey. As a professional engineer with over 40 years of experience in the oil and gas industry, Al's career can be characterized as entrepreneurial. His first job, once completing university, was at Norson Energy. And while there, he took every opportunity to study each department within the company, soon learning the entire organization and all aspects of the energy business. At the same time, Allen was learning the energy business, he also felt a calling to have his own enterprise. After a brief stint at the U of C MBA program, Allen decided to venture off on his own and start 2 fast food outlets, all while still working full-time at Norson. And after 13 years at Norson, he decided it was time to take a bigger leap and start his first oil and gas company. In 1995, Allen started a private oil and gas company called Ardent Energy. A year later, he would change the name to Avid Oil and Gas and take the company public. 5 years later, he sold Avid to Husky Oil. And after selling Avid, he took some time off to travel with his young family and then started a new public company called Rock Energy in 2002. Rock persevered through many business cycles and was eventually sold to Raging River in 2016. After selling Rock, Allen co-founded a new company in Scepter Energy to investigate the opportunity of developing gas to liquids projects in Western Canada. In 2019, he joined Lynx Energy to provide leadership and support while the company completed financial and management restructuring, and then to be part of the team driving forward. Today, he serves as the president and CEO of Lynx Energy. Welcome to the show, Al.
Nice to see you, Lisa. Thank you.
It is nice to have you. Now, the one thing I took out of your, this is interesting. I took this out of the last guest, was you have your ICD.D designation. And I feel this is floating around me like it's time I should take my own. At what point did you decide to take that for yourself?
Yeah, actually, that probably happened right at the time I was selling Rock Energy and sort of looking at what's the next development of my career as I move into the next chapter of my life, so to speak. So what I wanted to do was sort of get that foundational training that the ICD.D provides. Mm-hmm. The other thing that it gave me was, it's kind of a refresh MBA, I would call it. Okay. And if you've ever looked into the ICD program, it's actually very thorough, and you'll get a good refresh on the business principles and what's the issues of the day. You'll meet a lot of really interesting people. That's probably the thing. But the other thing I realized is I had been a director many times through all those companies that you had mentioned earlier. I was chairman of the board and director at Avid and Ardent and Rock and in nonprofit organizations. So I had done a lot of directorship roles. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, geez, I better learn how to do it. So actually, it was a really great step for me, and I'm quite glad that I did that. So I highly recommend people to look into that if they're looking at their career.
Yeah, and I think as the last guest, I had noted that a lot of women want to get involved in boards and chairs. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we're just afraid. Maybe we don't think we know enough, but they're in roles of leadership now. So I have actually got a call into a group that is, I see their name on this. I'm like, I'm going to find out more. So thank you for answering that question.
No, absolutely. I think it kind of solidifies the experience that you've already got. And I think that don't underestimate what you've already learned. And young companies today with young entrepreneurs leading them need that help. Yeah. And that's a way to give back, in fact.
Good. All right. So for anyone listening, these are special podcasts. We're interviewing some of our LeaderImpact members like Al, and we're asking them 4 main questions. So this is our 3rd in a row, but we really talk about pivotal turning points, best principles of success, greatest failures. So we go through all those questions, and then of course we end with our 2 favorites. So we're gonna start with our first one. And Al, you know what? We want to hear your professional story and how you got to where you are today. So we're wondering if you can give us a snapshot of some pivotal turning points along that journey.
Great, you bet, Lisa. So I think you had a great summary of my career in the introduction there, and one of the things is foundational to me and comes from my father
Hmm.
is entrepreneurship. And I've always thought that I was going to be, running my own company, doing whatever that. But one of the delusions that I think a lot of people think of when they say, "Oh, I want to have my own company because then I can be my own boss," the number one lie. As soon as you have your own company, everybody's your boss. So you've got to understand that, and that you're not getting away from something, you're getting into something. So when I first started my career after getting my mechanical engineering degree, which I sort of believe to be foundational, just as a good science degree that I can understand and it can apply to almost any industry. That's where that went. But I went to that Norson, and at Norson, they blessed me with the opportunity to go throughout the company, and I was always on the place of this is my learning ground. This is where I can learn how these kinds of companies operate. Because I knew that if I tried to have my own oil company coming out the gate, that's probably not going to work. So you needed to spend some time and I think learn the business and spend some and let those mistakes happen that you will make. And I think that's what prevents you from making those bigger mistakes later. So I think I looked at that time at Norson as foundational to my career, not only in the training, but in the network I was able to build. So you look at all the people I met at that company. I was there at company almost 13 years. And I ended my time there as their manager of acquisitions and divestitures. And as the manager of A&D, you knew everybody in the city. Like everybody wanted to buy and sell properties with you and companies. We were doing all of that. And so I had this huge network that really was transformational in allowing me to start Ardent, which was the next company, which turned into Avid.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, it's all about the training, all about laying out the path forward and running to something, not from something, if you know what I mean. And the Avid story was very successful actually. Within 5 years, we took the company from 0 to 6,000 barrels, which is a reasonably good sized company at the time. Sold it to Husky. Life looked good. Didn't need to work again. Life is grand, right? But I'm only 42 years old. Like you can't just sit around the house, right? So you gotta spend some time, find out what it is that you really want to do. Spend some time with your kids and wife at the time, and say. But then after a while, you get a little itchy. So that's when I started Rock, and Rock was a much more longer term project. Almost 14 to 15 years. And so again, in Rock, the thing that happened there was you had a lot of people come and go through the course of those 15 years. And you saw some business cycles. The company transformed itself a few times, or in oil or in gas or in heavy oil or in polymer floods, technology, things like that, all of which was very fun. And, a lot of people go through your organization in that time frame. And I really, really enjoyed the fact that we had people start their career with us, get married, have kids, and go on with their life. And you're providing employment for them. They're providing value for you, obviously. Mm-hmm. And again, being a part of that was quite rewarding for me. And so I looked at that as like, okay, there's more to, I want to be a part of helping people develop themselves and their careers and that type of thing. And so that's what Rock was. In fact, at the very end, when we finally sold the company, I had this book made and it had pictures of all of the main assets we had, which people would all be a part of making. But we had the names of every single employee that ever worked there at the back of this book. And I was able to get that book to everybody that at one time or were currently working there. So again, a bit of a, hey, we spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah. You know what I love about your story when I think of Norson and all the opportunities you had there, and then the companies that you were part of, started, continue, is that we pivot in life. So, yours was you got the choice to pivot. You got you weren't fired or anything. But I think of people who get fired and they see it as a negative. It's like, no, take this as an opportunity to go, I'm going to take what I learned here and go to the next thing. So you may feel it negative, but it's like, look at it as an opportunity to pivot, right?
Absolutely.
I used that word a lot 2-3 years ago. It was like, when I was in event industry, it disappeared, for a little while. But it was like, what do I get to pivot to?
Absolutely. Yeah. You've got to have that confidence to, like you did, to think of it that way. And I hate to admit, I've had to let a lot of people go over the course of those years, not working out. The job isn't working out for them. And that's always my message. Like, this job isn't for you. You need to go find the one that you will. And I don't know of a scenario where that wasn't true. And
Yeah.
almost all of them in time found where they needed to be.
Yeah. That sounds a little bit like Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Did you read that one?
We have read that.
This is just isn't for you, but there's something really great for you out there, not here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, we want to talk about your best principle of success. So if you can give us your best principle of success and tell us a story that illustrates that.
Yeah, I think the best one is probably perseverance. It's, when you're in the middle of something and you're moving forward, you can't always see how it's going to work out. So you've got to have, the courage and the nimbleness, like you say, to pivot as the opportunity presents itself. And at the time that you're at this dark place, you probably can't see an opportunity. So you just got to persevere, with the belief, the foundational belief that something's going to come up and it's going to provide you an avenue and a way to the next place so that you'll find the next thing. And I know when I first started, for example, Avid, I'm coming out of Norson and, I've got this great contact database, but I don't have any money. I don't have a property. I don't have anything it takes to sort of get things going. And I was a single one guy. I was sitting, a buddy of mine lent me his file room, and I set up my office in his file room. I actually strung a telephone wire from the T-bar ceiling so I could plug in my fax machine, which is, we had those back then, and that's how we got going. But I had no clue what was going to actually materialize as I moved forward. So I had this maybe blind faith that I was going to find something in some time, and I just persevered through. And the Avid story worked out to be very, very successful. And it's just, you just don't know where it's going to come from. So I know a lot of people like to say, well, I just want to plan the next 3 steps so they can get to the 4th step. And sometimes it doesn't work that way. And you've got to have the faith to take a step. And when you get there, you'll see more stones in the path that you can step on.
Yeah. When you talk about perseverance, and I love that you mentioned the dark place. And I just wonder, when I think if I'm in a dark place, I always think of the people I surround myself with, right? And I just wonder, when you were ever in a dark place, what did you do? What was that thing you did? You make the call. Yeah,
for me, I'm a very structured kind of guy. I like to have routine in my life, and so I would never sort of stay at home. I would always get up, go to work, try to figure it out, even though there was no work to do. You get it. I remember getting in the office in the early days of Avid, and you're looking around, okay, what do I do now? and that you just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. You keep meeting people, you keep moving forward, and you just have to have. I think it's back to that perseverance, and you just got to believe. You just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and it's just. For me, structure was important, so I knew I had to get up and do that, and that got me there. And I had no clue what was going to happen that day, but something always did. Small thing that start to grow into something else.
Yeah, I love that. When I had the world, cut the event industry off, I continued to get up at 5:30 every morning. I didn't really have anywhere to go. It was exactly. I'm going to get up.
Yeah. No, it's exactly. You get up and you don't know what's going to face yourself. But I'll tell you one thing: if you're not awake, you're not going to see it.
Right. Get ready. Yeah. All right. Well, here's a great question about failures and mistakes. I mean, I think we both know we learn more from our failures and mistakes than our successes. So would you share one of your greatest failures or mistakes and what you learned from it?
Yeah. I think for me, if I look back, as a fairly strong-willed person, sometimes you can't hear very well. And my failure is failing to listen. And I had a couple of scenarios, I think of my personal life, with my children, my wife. When they're telling me something, I need to put down where I really want to go and listen, because they're trying to tell me something. And if I don't hear it, ultimately it'll rear its head again later. I had another scenario in my work environment where I actually had a situation where, in the case of rock, where, we're a publicly traded company. I had this hedge fund start to take a position in the company and build a position in the company. And then ultimately they were making demands as to what they wanted with respect to the board construction and the direction of the company. And all of a sudden I had this competing voice to me. And then at the same time, I had a bank with their agenda. And they had an agenda that says, we kind of want to get out of small oil and gas companies in Calgary. And I wasn't hearing these two voices. And what happened is I kept thinking, well, I can keep this guy happy by doing this, and I can keep this guy happy by doing that. But in reality, I failed to hear what they were really saying. And that ultimately ended up in the end of Rock, which was not as successful as Avid. And we ended up having to sell the company in the very bottom of the market. And so to appease these two masters that came through. And I wonder sometimes if I would have listened to them, could I have done a better job of that? Mm-hmm. So I now try to make sure I listen. Like when someone's telling me something, I should probably hear it, and whether I like it or not, and make sure that you hear that.
I've got this being a mom in the back of my head, the kid telling you something, and then it all breaks loose. Exactly.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. On the family front, this is a very significant one.
Yeah. You'd think we would learn from there, though, Al. You think we would take those learnings from home and go, you know what, we really should listen more.
Yeah, no, I know. It's funny. I'm absolutely, self-talk, right? Okay, listen, she's saying something.
Yeah, I should listen. My husband doesn't talk much. He's a great listener, but he doesn't. But when he does talk, I listen, because he's usually just, at least I go up and down and I'm, all over the place, and he lets me go, and he's fine. And then, but the one time he says something, it's like, he's talking. I should listen. This is important.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
Yeah. All right. Well, at Leader Impact, we want to grow professionally, personally, and spiritually for increasing impact. Would you be willing to share an example of how the spiritual makes a practical difference in your life as a leader?
Yeah. I think the thing for me is, again, when you're in the middle of that dark time and in the middle of, persevering against what you might think are all the odds, it's your faith that keeps you persevering, keeps you getting up at 5:30 in your case. And it keeps you moving forward. And I had a situation for me particularly, which I call my Job years.
Oh.
I had about 7 of them in a row. And in those 7 years, I had a lot of, challenges to me. And I was in the middle of it all. And I'll give you a couple of examples. My first marriage failed. And I had moved out to Comox, British Columbia, and I was in the process of trying to restore the marriage, but didn't work. Ended up having to come back to Calgary. My mom was diagnosed with dementia. This is all happening like in an order of all kinds of things. And then my oldest son was diagnosed with bipolar. And so now I'm dealing with his diagnosis and the struggles with mental health and addiction issues. I had it. My dad was at the same. This is all happening like one right after the other. My dad lost his hand in an industrial accident. He was smoothing some steel on a lathe and tore his hand off. Like, it's just okay. Then you go. Then I don't know if you remember in 2013 in Calgary we had the floods. Our apartment building got flooded. I had to relocate from my home in the middle of all of that. I was on a business trip and I had a rupture in my colon, and I was diagnosed with diverticulitis and came this close to dying. I came home on the airplane, went straight to the emergency, and was on the hospital bed within hours.
Wow.
Lived, obviously. Then I had a heart infection. And then I had, business challenges started to happen in the middle of all of this. I had the oil price collapse. We had the dissident shareholder, the Road Bank. We had to force the sale at the bottom of the market. We had, then my mom died. All of this was happening one right after the other. And you're saying, like, I was sort of on the page, okay, bring it on. Like, is that all you got? You get a little quirky and all of that in the middle of this dark period of my life, right? And it was my faith that kept me saying, no, God's got a plan for me. I don't care what's coming at me. I know he's got a plan, and he sees what I can't see. And so I had this blind faith that things were going to get better, and that I just had to persevere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And through that 7-ish years, that all of this was just happening one right after the other, and then things started to turn, as in the story, and I met my new wife. It was the blessed, I'm fully blessed with that. I, recovered from my diverticulitis. I recovered from my heart disease. I started my new opportunity at a Scepter with the GTL business, and then further on to Lynx, which turned out to be a phenomenal opportunity for me. Some of my other investments that I had played on in those Job years, the investments are all getting hit. Now the investments are all starting to work. So, and then my kids all, came of age and all became beautiful young adults. And so that's kind of where I'm at now, and it's sort of like, but it was those 5 to 7 years in that perseverance and persisting with that faith that I think God's got a bigger, better plan for me. I just don't let me give up.
Yeah. So have you always had faith? Like, since you were young, did your family go to church?
No. I'm a quote new believer and a fairly young Christian, I would call myself. I only came to know Jesus when I was about 40.
Wow.
So, I was saying, okay, this is what I see. And then as I started to kind of surrender, then I kind of started to see his hand on my life. But even today, Lisa, I'm not like a really strong, like I have a strong faith. I'm actively engaged in my communities, but I'm not a really, diehard Christian like some are. And that, I think one of the things that I like about where I'm at is like, I have this belief that I have my walk and you have yours. I fully honor your walk. It's your walk with him, not mine.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure that if there's anything I can do to sort of facilitate that, I will. But, that's your personal journey.
Yeah. I think we all come into someone's life at a different part of their journey. So you don't have to be, your faith is just a little part of someone's life. They'll meet the next person that'll take them a little further. Because I have amazing people in my life that I always say, like, they almost scare me. They're so Christian and they're so amazing in their faith. And it's like, I wish I was them. And, I'm working at it, but
and we all are, right? Isn't that our journey?
Yeah.
It's our journey. And, and I always think to myself, like, you're right. I may not be the person that brings them, but maybe I'm the one who drops a seed or waters a seed.
I call it dripping on them. Someone laughed at me and said, I love that. I'm like, yeah, I'm just a little drip on them. Like, I'm just a little part of their journey. So
just a little part of their journey, and don't want to get in the way of it.
Yeah.
But I want to, what can I do to facilitate that? And I think, in my opinion, the way you do that, and this is kind of, is you just be truthful and honest, and you walk the talk. And I think people see that. And I have an example of a very close friend of mine who I would argue has brought me to God through his walk, not through his words.
It's all about who we surround ourselves with.
Yeah.
We have a choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you have anything more on those stories? Did you want to tell before I give you my last two questions? But
no, I think that's all I was hoping to kind of convey today.
Awesome. Okay. Well, you're on Leader Impact. So obviously I have my questions that we ask all our guests. As you know, you're part of Leader Impact, but we are dedicated to leaders having a lasting impact. So as you continue through your own journey in life, have you considered what you want your faith legacy to be when you leave this world?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's kind of tease off of what we were just talking about. It's back to, I want to have demonstrated God's love, right? I want to have walked it and people to see it, and then they'll do what they'll do with it. But I wanted to have demonstrated. I want people to say, oh, I remember him, and this is how he would handle that. And then they hopefully are inspired to do the same. And I think, I call it soft witnessing. And, I'm not, in their face, but I should be consistently demonstrating God's love and process. I think the other thing that's important, you don't sometimes forget the platform you have, and that people are watching you, And they are, and from all kinds of, and they're watching all of us, by the way, no matter what your position in life. But you do have a platform, so don't shirk that responsibility, and make sure that I step into that platform and make sure that I do that. And one of the things one of the things I have posted on my monitor here is the golden life is not to live forever. The golden life is to create something that does.
Mm.
And so that's the legacy of your faith, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I recently attended a funeral. I had a few funerals this past weekend, and both were beautiful. One of them was my nephew's wife, Ensley Peters, and she, as I was at the funeral, she was 24 years old, died of cancer. They've been married for 2 years, and when I think of what legacy she left the most amazing faith legacy. The church was packed. It was overflowed. It was live streamed. She's 24 years old, and she changed lives. And she died of cancer. And in her words, she had said, I don't want you to turn away from God because of this. You need to believe more. This was my purpose. It was a revival. Like, it was amazing. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was it
very, very powerful.
For 24 years old. Yeah, she changed the world.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get happy again. My final question, all guests, what brings you the greatest joy?
Okay, so I got to tell you a funny story.
Okay.
So I just recently bought a 1971 Barracuda.
Oh.
Fully restored street rod muscle car thing, right? And I told Cindy, my wife, this is my year of ridiculous. This is a ridiculous thing to do, but we did. And when you take that car and you drive down the street anywhere in the world, like you come up to a stoplight, people come over to you and their smiles are this big, and they're remembering a time in their life when this car was relevant to them. And the joy that car brings to people is amazing. Like, I thought, who would ever thought that this could happen? So I thought that's kind of a funny story, and I love driving the car around just so people can see it, and I get the reaction of their joy.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's a funny kind of illustration of what something relatively simple can do, and it just gives them a break, right? It just takes them back to 1971 when maybe they were in grade 5 and they wanted to get a 1971 Barracuda or whatever. And it's a funny thing. But I think for me, as I look at that, again, it's about giving, right? Giving that gift, right? So they have the gift of that memory. Maybe that's what I was able to give them. I don't know. But I think when I look at my career and how it's evolved in my life with my children and my wife and the people that I work with here, when I can help support people be who they can be, that's my goal in life. And it's back to create something that does live forever. It's really in them, right? And so when I get, when I have, and LeaderImpact is very much a part of that. So I'm inviting young professionals inside this company at Lynx to join the LeaderImpact movement, and they're showing up and they're seeing the value of this. And what I believe I'm doing is investing in them, and so that they can be more in their life as they move forward. That's what gives me the most joy, thinking like, wow, look, who knows what they can do. Right?
Yeah.
And all they might have needed was a little helping hand along the way, because I got a little helping hand back in the day.
Yeah.
And I think that's what gives me the joy.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. I love that answer. We're all just a little part of someone's journey. And if you can give them a little bit,
Absolutely.
71 Barracuda, everyone's smiling just a little bit. Al, I want to thank you for joining us. Many times I come into these and all I know is I have read your bio.
Right.
And I think we think as leaders, we look at each other and go, they're so successful. There's nothing that's ever happened to them. They've never had a failure. And to hear your story and just to be vulnerable and share is a gift to everyone. And I think that's why I show up here all the time, is because this is just Lisa's little counseling session of leadership. And I just want to thank you for spending the last 30 minutes with us. It was fantastic. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate the opportunity to meet you and spend some time.
All right. Now, if people are listening going, I want to look up Allen Bey. How do we find you, or what's the best place to find you and more information about you?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, I think if you went through LinkedIn, you'll find me there, and then you can reach out to me via LinkedIn, and I'd really appreciate hearing back from anybody who's curious.
Awesome. I love LinkedIn, love social media. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Al. I appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you're part of Leader Impact, you can always discuss or share this podcast with your group. And if you are not yet part of a Leader Impact but would like to find out more and grow your leadership, find our podcast page on our website at leaderimpact.ca and check out our free leadership assessment. You will also find on our webpage Chapter 1 of Braden Douglas's book, Becoming a Leader of Impact. You will love it. You can also check out groups available in Canada at leaderimpact.ca, or if you're listening from anywhere else in the world, check out leaderimpact.com or get in touch with us by email, info@leaderimpact.ca, and we will connect you. And if you like this podcast, please leave us a comment, give us a rating or a review. This will help other global leaders find our podcast. Thank you for engaging with us, and remember, impact starts with you.